You wake in the dark, and something is wrong. Your eyes are open. You can see your room, the faint outline of the door, the dim shape of the ceiling above you. You are awake. You are certain of it. But when you try to move, nothing happens. Your arm will not lift. Your fingers will not curl. You try to turn your head, to call out, to do anything at all, and your body refuses every command as if it belongs to someone else. And then you realize you are not alone. There is a presence in the room. You cannot see it clearly, but you can feel it the way you feel someone standing behind you in an empty house. It is close. It is watching. And somehow you know, with a certainty that has no logic behind it, that it means you harm. A weight settles onto your chest, pressing the air out of you. A shadow gathers at the foot of the bed, or in the corner, or leaning over your face. You want to scream. You cannot. You are trapped inside your own body, awake and aware, while something ancient and patient stands over you in the dark. And then, after seconds that feel like hours, it ends. Your body returns to you. The presence is gone. The room is just a room again. If this has ever happened to you, you are not unwell and you are not alone. You have crossed into one of the strangest territories the human mind can enter, a place that exists on the border between sleeping and waking. And the truly remarkable thing is not that it happened to you. It is that the very same experience, down to the shadow in the corner and the weight on the chest, has happened to people in every culture, on every continent, in every century of recorded history. They didn't compare notes, they didn't share a language, and still they described the same visitor. This is TheLiminal. Step into the space between. Part 1. The state nobody warns you about. For something so frightening, sleep paralysis is astonishingly common. Studies that have tried to count it suggest that somewhere between a third and half of all people will experience it at least once in their lives. For most, it happens only a handful of times. A strange night, quickly forgotten by morning. For others, it returns again and again, an unwelcome guest that arrives whenever sleep is disturbed, whenever stress is high, whenever they sleep on their back in an unfamiliar bed. And yet, almost no one is told about it in advance. There is no lesson in school, no warning from a doctor. It simply happens, one ordinary night, and the person experiencing it is left to make sense of something that feels less like a medical event and more like an intrusion from somewhere else. That gap between how common it is and how little we are prepared for it is part of what makes it so terrifying. When it happens, you have no framework to hold it. You only have the raw experience, the paralysis, the presence, the dread. And the human mind, faced with an experience it cannot explain, does what it has always done. It reaches for a story. To understand why the story so often takes the shape of a dark figure in the room, we first have to understand what is actually happening to your body in those frozen moments. Because the truth, as is so often the case at the edges of consciousness, is stranger and more revealing than any ghost. Part 2. The body that forgets to wake. Every night when you fall asleep, you make a journey. You descend through the lighter stages of sleep into the deep, slow waves of dreamless rest, and then you rise again into a stage called REM, rapid eye movement sleep. This is the country of dreams. Behind your closed eyes, your eyes dart back and forth as if watching a film, and your brain becomes nearly as active as it is when you are awake, conjuring entire worlds out of nothing. But there is a problem with dreaming. If your brain is generating the experience of running, of fighting, of falling, what stops your body from acting it out? What stops you from leaping out of bed and crashing into the wall in the middle of a dream? The answer is a kind of biological safety mechanism. During REM sleep, your brain sends a signal that switches off the muscles of your body. It is called REMatonia, and it is a brilliant piece of engineering. Your mind is free to run wild through the most vivid adventures imaginable, while your body lies perfectly still and perfectly safe. Every night you are paralyzed. You simply never know it because you are asleep. Sleep paralysis is what happens when that system makes a mistake. Imagine the machinery of sleep slipping slightly out of alignment. Your conscious mind surfaces. It wakes up, but the switch that paralyzes your body has not yet been flipped back off. For a few seconds, sometimes longer, you exist in an impossible overlap. You are awake enough to know where you are, to see your room, to think clearly. But your body is still locked in the paralysis of REM. The dreaming and the waking worlds are running at the same time, layered over one another, and you are caught in the seam between them. This is the threshold state. Neuroscience and folklore agree on one thing, even if they speak different languages. This is a place that should not exist, a doorway that is supposed to stay closed, briefly propped open, and in that gap, your mind is doing something extraordinary. It is still half in the dream. The machinery that builds the worlds of REM sleep is still running, and now it has a real room to work with and a fully awake observer to terrify. Part 3. The Intruder. Your brain builds. Here is where the experience turns from strange to monstrous, because sleep paralysis does not simply leave you frozen in an empty room. Again and again, across cultures and centuries, people report the same three things: a crushing weight on the chest, the overwhelming sense of a presence, and the figure itself. The shadow, the intruder, the thing that watches. Why these three, so reliably, in people who have never met? Consider the weight on the chest first. During REM sleep, your breathing changes. It becomes shallower, more rapid, governed by a different rhythm than waking breath. When you wake into paralysis, you cannot take the deep, deliberate breaths your panicking mind is demanding. You try to breathe deeply, and your body will not cooperate. To a terrified brain, that sensation has an obvious interpretation. Something is sitting on me. Something is pressing me down. The body's own limitation becomes, in the mind's story, an external attacker. Then there is the presence, that unshakable feeling that someone is in the room. This may be the most uncanny part of the whole experience, and it points to something profound about how your brain is built. Deep in the brain sits a structure devoted almost entirely to one task: detecting threats, and especially detecting other beings. Predators, rivals, the presence of another mind nearby. In sleep paralysis, this threat detection system appears to fire on its own, in an aroused, hypervigilant state, without any actual trigger in the room. And so, your brain receives a signal it cannot ignore. Something is here, but there is nothing to see. So the mind, which cannot tolerate a sensation without a source, builds one. It generates the missing intruder to match the feeling of intrusion. It populates the empty room with the figure that the feeling demands. You do not see a shadow and then feel afraid. You feel the presence first, and then your mind sculpts a shadow to explain it. This is perhaps the single most revealing thing about sleep paralysis, and it is the reason this experience matters far beyond the bedroom. It is a window into a truth we usually never glimpse, that what you experience as the world is not a recording of what is out there. It is a construction. Your brain is always building your reality, stitching raw sensation into a seamless story, filling every gap with its best guess. Most of the time, it does this so well that you never notice. In sleep paralysis, you catch it in the act. You watch your own mind manufacture a monster out of nothing but a misfiring alarm and the dark. Part 4. The Visitor with 1,000 Names. If sleep paralysis were only a private glitch, a personal malfunction, that would be remarkable enough. But it is not private, it is shared. Shared across the entire human species, across every barrier of language and time. And when you look at how different cultures have described their visitor in the night, something genuinely astonishing emerges. Travel to Newfoundland, and people will tell you about the old hag. To be attacked in your sleep, there is to be hagged, held down by a withered old woman who sits upon your chest and steals your breath while you lie helpless beneath her. Cross the ocean to the folklore of medieval Europe, and you find the mare, not a horse, but a malevolent spirit that rides the sleeper, crushing the chest, bringing suffocating dreams. That word survives, hidden in plain sight, in a word you use all the time. The mare in Nightmare is this creature. Every time you call a bad dream a nightmare, you are speaking the name of a sleep paralysis demon that haunted your ancestors 1,000 years ago. Go to Japan, and you will hear of kanashibari, to be bound by metal, fastened to the bed by an invisible force while a presence looms over you. In Brazil, they speak of the pisadeira, a gaunt, long-nailed crone who lurks on the rooftops at night and creeps down to tread upon the chests of those who sleep on their backs with full stomachs. In Italy, the pandafecce, a witch or a ghost or a terrible cat-like spirit that presses down upon the sleeper. Off the coast of East Africa, on the island of Zanzibar, they fear the popobawa, a shadowy presence that comes in the night to those who lie alone. The details shift. The costume changes. A hag, a witch, a spirit, a demon, a cat, a djinn. But beneath the costume, the body of the story is always the same. You are lying down. You cannot move. There is a weight upon your chest, and a malevolent being is in the room with you. How is this possible? How can people separated by oceans and centuries, who never read the same books or heard the same legends, arrive at almost identical accounts of the same night terror? The answer is both humbling and beautiful. They are not describing different monsters. They are all describing the same experience, the same misfire of the same ancient machinery that every human brain carries. The paralysis is universal because the biology is universal. The chest weight is universal because the breathing is universal. The lurking presence is universal because the threat detection system is universal. Each culture simply reached into its own store of fears and dressed the figure in local clothes. The hag, the mare, the witch, the demon. These are the masks. The face beneath them all is the same. We did not inherit the monster. We inherited the doorway it walks through, and every culture that ever lived, finding that same door propped open in the dead of night, drew a picture of who might be standing on the other side. Part 5. Why the threshold is always haunted. There is a pattern here that goes far deeper than sleep, and it is the reason this experience belongs to the world of the liminal. Notice where the visitor always appears. Not in deep sleep. You are gone there, unreachable. Not in full waking. By morning, the room is just a room. The figure appears only in the narrow border between the two, in the threshold, in the seam. Human beings have always sensed that the in-between is dangerous. The boundary, the border, the crossing. These are the places our myths fill with peril. Twilight, the hour that is neither day nor night, is when the old stories say the veil grows thin. The crossroads, which is neither one road nor the other, is where folklore places its devils and its bargains. The doorway, neither inside nor outside, is guarded in culture after culture, by charms and rituals and superstitions about who may carry whom across it. We are uneasy at every threshold, because a threshold is a place where the rules of one world have ended and the rules of the next have not yet begun. Sleep paralysis is, quite literally, a threshold made flesh. It is the moment your consciousness stands in the doorway between dreaming and waking, with one foot in each world and the door swinging open behind you. Is it any wonder that this is exactly where the human imagination has always placed its monsters? Our ancestors did not need to understand REM atonia to recognize a threshold when they fell into one. They felt the in-between, and they did what humans have always done at the in-between. They populated it with the watchers and the gatekeepers of the dark. This is why the same figure visits strangers across the world. It is not because a real demon travels from bed to bed. It is because every human mind, when it finds itself caught in the doorway between worlds, fills that doorway with the oldest fear we have, the fear that we are not as alone in the dark as we would like to believe. The visitor is the shape of the threshold itself, given a face by a frightened mind that cannot bear to leave the in-between empty. Part 6. Standing in the doorway. So what do we do with this knowledge? That the terror in the night is built by our own minds, that the demon is a mask over a misfire, that the visitor is the threshold wearing a face. For some, it is a relief. To understand sleep paralysis is to take much of its power away. The next time it happens, and for many people, it will happen again. You can lie there in the frozen dark and recognize where you are. You are not under attack. You are not being visited by anything from outside. You have simply woken a few seconds early into the doorway while your body finishes the journey behind you. The paralysis will pass. It always passes. The presence is your own alarm system ringing in an empty house. The figure is your own mind, painting a picture to match a feeling. Naming the thing does not make it pleasant, but it loosens its grip. But there is something else here too, something worth sitting with, and it is the reason these strange states deserve our attention rather than just our fear. Sleep paralysis is one of the very few moments in an ordinary life when the seams of reality become visible. Most of us go from cradle to grave without ever once catching our own mind in the act of building the world. We trust what we see. We assume the room is simply the room, that our experience is a clean window onto what is really out there. And then, for a few seconds in the dark, the window cracks. You see a figure that is not there. You feel a weight that has no body. You sense a presence in an empty room, and it is utterly, completely convincing. In that moment, you are handed a piece of knowledge that the wise of every age have tried to teach, and most of us have refused to learn. That the line between what is real and what the mind constructs is far, far thinner than we like to believe. The same brain that built the shadow in the corner is building every waking second the entire world you take for granted. The visitor in the night is not a ghost. It is a teacher. It comes to tell you in the most visceral way imaginable that you have never once experienced the world directly, only the version your mind assembles. And if your mind can build a watching presence out of nothing on an ordinary Tuesday night, what else, in the broad and confident daylight, is it quietly building without your knowledge? That is the question the threshold leaves us with. Not what was in the room, but how much of everything I see is painted by the same hand that painted the shadow. Outro. The space between sleeping and waking is only the first of the thresholds we'll explore on this channel. There are others. The moment your mind invents a memory that never happened, the empty room that feels wrong for no reason you can name, the strange certainty that you have lived this exact moment before. Each one is a crack in the smooth surface of ordinary reality, and through each one, you can glimpse the machinery underneath. If this episode gave you a new way to understand a frightening night, or a reason to look a little harder at the world you usually trust without thinking, then subscribe and stay with us. New documentaries arrive every Wednesday and Saturday. There is a whole country at the edge of consciousness, and almost no one ever maps it. This is TheLiminal. Step into the space between.